All right, folks, we have finally arrived at what is by far my favorite feature of Autograph to play with, and that is making 3D objects from scratch. I know there are better tools out there for this kind of thing. Cinema 4D obviously is much more powerful and flexible and built to make 3D objects, and there's a lot of perks to that, of course. But when you're in your 2D compositing app, having the ability to make whatever you need from scratch and having a lot of flexibility and options around that is just such a powerful thing. And I just love Autograph for that. And it's actually really fun to play with too. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to start in just a blank composition here. And we're going to start with a shape layer. Switch to my shape tool, and I'll just make an ellipse. We're not trying to do anything great here. I'm just going to click and drag. Yeah, sure, whatever this is fine. So I have a shape layer, a shape generator, and I have a shape and a fill. And these are necessary ingredients for creating 3D objects. Now, here are the two steps that you need to follow. Number one, I need to come here to this grid, and we haven't talked about this yet, but this is what converts a layer from a 2D layer to a 3D layer. So by default, these layers are 2D, and everything we've been created so far has been 2D, but I'm going to click this to make it 3D. Now, nothing happens at that point because I need to also right-click on this layer, go to Options, and down here at the bottom, I need to enable Extrude. Check Enable Extrude, and there you have it. Now, we can't see anything here just yet. So we need to change this view from 2D at the top here in the viewer panel, change this view from 2D to 3D. And then we can see this. I'm going to go ahead and press the F key to zoom in to that. And Command or Control and the left mouse button will allow me to orbit around in 3D space. I could also use the middle mouse wheel to pan around, and I could also use the mouse wheel itself, not the button, to zoom with that wheel there. And that's how we navigate 3D space. And so we have the transform gizmo. We have the different axes that we can adjust here. One at a time if we want to, or two at a time with these squares if we want to move that around. Now, we can see that our humble ellipse is now a three-dimensional object. And I can fiddle with it by going to the fill. Again, all of the 3D attributes that you're going to be playing with are on the fill or the stroke. And that messed me up a bunch of times when I first started playing with this. But remember that, fill and stroke, that's where the 3D stuff is. So with the fill selected, I can adjust the extrude size, and I can make this bigger or more narrow. And perhaps at least as importantly, we have these bevel options. So I could increase the bevel size, and look at that. There we go. Look at those beveled edges. Beautiful beveled edges. Look at that. Smooth as the day it was born. Beautiful. And I could also change the bevel type from circle, or if I just wanted a straight bevel, I'm doing something for a bank, want something that's a little bit more business, a little more official, got this flat edge there. And I could also change this to any one of a number of things, inside circle, etc. Now I'm going to go change the fill color to something kind of like darker. I don't know. Yeah, there we go. A darker color. And you'll notice that we start to kind of like lose some of that color here. And one of the things that'd be nice is if we had like a dome light. So let's go ahead and bring in a dome light in our scene to give us some HDR lighting. So I'm going to go over here to my timeline panel. I'm going to press Shift Q or this little generator drop down here. And I am going to add a light and then a dome light. Now, this needs an environment map. So the way that we can connect an environment map is just by dragging and dropping, like it says, with the big arrow, connect a source here. And so in my assets folder, in my project panel, I have the EXR file. I can drag and drop that right on that plug, right where that arrow is telling me, and let go. And now I have image-based lighting. And I could tell because this little icon here has, it's like a little image grid, and that's the sign in Autograph for an image. We could also press Shift Q and add other lights such as a point light or directional light, spotlight, whatever. So I click point here, and this is interesting because it's not affecting my layer. And the reason that's happening, the reason our lights are not affecting our object is because this fill is just kind of like a flat fill. We really need to give this a material, and thankfully we can do that. Again, it's in the fill, everything's in the fill or the stroke, and I have these options for front, bevel, body, and back materials. And I'm going to select front material, click the generator here, and I have multiple options. I can use a material on the right-hand side. This will create a material that lives inside of the fill, or I could come down here to new material layer. This will create a new layer that has the material in it. And when I first started playing with this, I used these built-in materials because I thought, well, I don't want to clutter up my timeline panel with these extra layers I don't need. I'll just keep it right here. And then that made it like really difficult for other layers, other objects to use that material. So from now on, I learned my lesson. I'm going to do a new material layer. So with that material selected, you can see all of the options we have here: normal maps, ambient occlusion maps, roughness maps, metallic maps, base color maps, etc., etc., etc. And also we're getting the dome light, the green from our HDR map inside of this color. We're also now finally getting the influence from the light, influence from the light here on our 3D object. We'll talk more about materials later on in this training series, but for now, just know that that's how to create them. Now I'm going to go back to my shape layer, and I'm going to click this plus icon here and add a stroke. Actually, I could just delete the fill. Don't need that anymore. And you can see that our stroke, because we've enabled extrude and have a 3D shape, that our stroke is 3D as well. So if I click on the stroke, we have a lot of the same options, right? I can go to end and start and actually animate this like I would as if it were a 2D shape. We also have extrude size. This is feeling a little thick to me. And then we also have our bevel size. So we can increase this and add some nice rounding to those edges. So you can see with these options, with the materials, with the lighting, with the bevel options, the extrude options, the stroke and fill options, there is a lot we can do with this feature inside of Autograph. Now, very briefly before we go, I'm going to go to this comp right here, which is actually the key that I made for the big project there, this key. This is what it looked like before I turned it 3D. And I just wanted to kind of take you through this to show you the options. It's all happening on one shape layer because I wanted all of this to be on the same wavelength here. I wanted it to all share a similar world. And you can see for this key loop, especially here, like the main part of the key, I got some interesting stuff going on. I have this ellipse. Actually, I'll turn it on and off. There's the outside one. And then I have another one that's kind of like subtracting from that. And one of the things that I did that I was really proud of, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I guess I shouldn't be so proud about it, but I changed the uniform scale of the ellipses. So the outside one is just like a regular ellipse, kind of squished a little bit. But then the inside one is a copy, but it's duplicated a little bit differently. So it's squished on the, well, what is now the x-axis a little bit more. So it's thinner at the top and thicker on the sides, and it creates this kind of like cool oval shape. I also did a little subtraction with some of these other things. I added this ellipse at the top here and then subtracted it with this other ellipse right here, and then added another one down here, and then added another big one here, and then subtracted that to create this kind of like point shape there. And then I had the bar, which I think was like a really interesting experiment because I wanted it to be cylindrical. If I created like a bar, like an actual like rectangular shape right here, then it wouldn't have the kind of like cylindrical look that I needed. And so I fiddled with that a little bit, tried to cheat it, and I just couldn't get it to work the way that I wanted. So instead what I did is I actually, for the bar itself, is I created just like a regular ellipse, and it's not facing here. Oh, this is it right here. And then what I did is that once it was 3D, I rotated this in 3D space. So that would give me kind of this tubular cylinder look, this authentic tube thing that I was looking for. And then also what I did too is I made duplicates of that same cylinder and gave it a much smaller extrusion and also gave it a little bit bigger of a radius for these little ellipses here. And that's how I create these little accents on the key. Also, this notch thing gave me some problems, and I finally got a design that I was like okay with, but basically this is a combination of a series of rectangles and other shapes kind of like cutting away. What's kind of cool though is that when you have a rectangle shape that's automatically created for you, you get these cool parameters: top, left, bottom, right, and left radius. So if I want to just kind of like increase the radius or adjust the radius here, I can do that parametrically with these values here. And actually, maybe I need to go to a different rectangle. Yeah, there. Let's try this rectangle here. So then I'll go to the top left radius. Yeah, and you can see that I can bring this in. I could really curve it if I want to. And being able to cut away in 2 dimensions like that also helps us when we make 3-dimensional stuff, because then we can also get the shapes that we want, and this could be our extrusion profile. So again, because of the power of Autograph, with its shapes, with its hierarchies, with its stroke and fill, with all these like parametric adjustments, we can make some pretty cool 3D objects from scratch.